All right, everyone. What I want to do today is two things, maybe three. I want to start out by talking about Shavuot, um, and then move from there to actually the Haftarah for Shavuot, which is the beginning of the book of Ezekiel. And then, if there is time, we'll do another Haftarah, which is actually the Haftarah that's read on the Shabbat during Passover, but it's also Ezekiel. And I thought it would be and very well known and somewhat, I think, misunderstood. It's the Haftarah about the dry bones. So that's the plan. And I know Sandy has something that she wants to do at the end, so we'll leave time for that as well.
Thank you.
So, about Shavuot, and I'm sure that some of what I'll say you undoubtedly know, but I will nonetheless say it. So it's good for me to refresh my memory anyway. So, as you probably know, Shavuot is one of what it's a chag, a holiday, and it's one of three of the pilgrimage festivals. The word chag actually in Hebrew means a circle. Um, and these were three times, and by the way, that's where the word Hajj in Arabic comes from, which is to go up, make a pilgrimage to Mecca and to return. Three times a year, says the Torah, we are to go up to God's chosen place on these three festivals. And they are Pesach and Sukkot and Shavuot. And they're all agricultural festivals in the Torah. They are tied to harvest. The first, remember that the biblical year begins in the spring. So Pesach is the first, and it's the early spring harvest. And then we come to Shavuot, which is the later spring harvest. And then we go to the fall and to the final of the harvest festivals at Sukkot. The other thing about these holidays is that they also have a historical dimension. And for Passover and for Sukkot, it is obvious, right? Passover is the Exodus from Egypt. It's the most clear, I think. We come to Sukkot in the fall, and it is about God causing us to dwell in Sukkot in the wilderness. Whatever that means exactly, it's clear that it's tied to the wilderness experience. Shavuot in the Torah has no historical connection. It is simply the end of a period of counting that begins at Passover, continues for 7 weeks, and on the 50th day is a holiday, and that is Shavuot. And the period of the count of the Omer, which we have turned into a mitzvah, it's not clear that when the Torah says you should count 7 weeks, it literally means that every day you should say, today is the first day of the Omer, today is the second day of the Omer, and etc. It's very unlikely that that's what the Torah means. It simply means wait 7 weeks, and then at the conclusion of these 7 cycles of 7 days, you will have a festival, and that festival is Shavuot, and the word means weeks because you've counted these weeks. And it's really the beginning and the end of the spring harvest. The Shavuot is actually the barley harvest. So, no historical connection whatsoever until we get to the time of the rabbis. And remember that for the rabbis, the most important thing is Torah. So, how is it that we don't celebrate the giving of the Torah in our liturgical year? Obviously, Shavuot should be the celebration of the giving of the Torah. Now, the rabbis enable this through very clever reading of events and dates, and they figure it out and they say, oh, it was Shavuot when Moses brings down the Torah. from Sinai, the tablets from Sinai, right? But there is no sense of that the revelation takes place on Shavuot in the Torah. And in fact, if you think about the logic of the Torah itself, if Shavuot were to be a festival, you wanted to give it a historical dimension, think about it this way. We have one that commemorates the Exodus. We have one that commemorates the wanderings in the wilderness. What would be the logical connection to Shavuot? Probably the moment when we entered the land of Israel at the end of the journey. The rabbis do not reach for that. For them, the Torah is the center of Jewish life, and we must have a Torah festival. And so it becomes Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of the Torah. And so it has been ever since. And today, like the other festivals, the agricultural dimensions of the holidays largely irrelevant. They're really about commemorating historical events and the underlying ethics that go with those events. So Passover, for example, is about freedom, right? That kind of thing. Okay, so what do we, if we're going to celebrate the giving of the Torah, how are we going to approach it? What do the events at Sinai, what are they about? So one classic rabbinic interpretation is that God brought us out of Egypt not simply to free us, but to make a covenant with us. God drew us out and to give us this role in the world as the carriers of these traditions that God intends for humanity. And so Shavuot is really a commemoration of the covenant, the making of this covenant. The covenant's going to be, in Jewish history, is going to be repeated and reaffirmed several times, including when the people enter the land of Israel. This is the first time that we get this covenant, and it is important that the people accept it. And so part of what we see in the reading around the revelation on Mount Sinai is that the people say, Na'aseh v'nishma, right? We will do it and we will understand it. In other words, we are committed to this covenant. And that's one basic conception here. And of course, the covenant has its obligation. Like any covenant, both sides have obligations. Both in a treaty, both sides have obligations. God's obligations here are more diffuse. I will be your God and you will be my people, right? You will be my cherished ones, right? You will be, in the language of the Torah reading this week, a nation of priests and a holy people. You will have a specific connection to me. That's on God's side. On our side, we have a lot of obligations, right? Beginning with the Ten Commandments, which is what we will read on Shavuot, but they're really the preamble to a code of law which immediately follows in the Torah, right? Which is Mishpatim, the parsha right after Yitro, where the parsha Yitro ends with the events on Sinai, and then we move to other laws that come. So our relationship to God is covenantal. We have a special privileged relationship as a nation of priests, holy people, and in return, we have to live according to certain rules. That's sort of the notion of covenant. I would also mention, and I know this, I've mentioned this before, but I think it's important. What does it mean to be a nation of priests? Well, just as the priests serve the people as a whole and connect them to God, one could say that the Jewish people who have this privileged role are the priests for the rest of the world. And our role is also to draw them closer to God. At any rate, that's one side if we talk about Shavuot. And the other side is, oh, I want to say one more thing about this before I move on to the other side. There are two approaches in rabbinic literature, in the Midrash, to this covenant. And there are two lovely midrashim about it. So one midrash, which is based around the language of the Torah, that the people were at the base of the mountain. Moses went up, they remained at the base of the mountain. But literally, it says tachat hahar, tachat, beneath. And so the Midrash imagines God picking up Mount Sinai, holding it over the heads of the Jewish people, accept my Torah, or this will be your grave, right? It's compelled upon us. This, of course, is very problematic if we want to think about this as a treaty, because we would be signing it under duress, right? Fortunately, there's another midrash. And this other midrash is that God goes shopping the Torah around to the other nations of the world. And he goes to them and he goes to the Amalekites and he says, you want my Torah? And they say, what's in it? And he says, thou shalt not kill. And they say, no, no, no. This is how we make our living. We go, we plunder, we kill, and so on. And then, and this midrash also, there's negative things to say about all the other nations, and they all ask what's in it, and again they reject it. And then they come to Israel, and Israel does not ask. From you? Great. Thank you. Right? So we have these two different ideas, one of which is we're kind of forced into it, and the other one is that we willingly accept it. And I've always thought about these two things as both true about the connection of Jews to God and to Jewish tradition. On the one hand, our tradition is if you are born a Jew, you are always a Jew. You may not like it, you may ignore it, but you are compelled to be a Jew and will be, in some sense, judged by the tradition accordingly. You can be a very bad Jew, but you're still a Jew. You can convert to another religion, you're still a Jew. Again, not a good Jew. We don't recognize conversion out, only conversion in, right? So on the one hand, you're compelled. On the other hand, Jews are fundamentally Jews by choice. You go to synagogue or you don't go to synagogue. It's up to you. There was a time when the Jewish communities were so organized that you would be ostracized if you didn't, quote, do the right thing. But that's not the reality of Jewish life anymore. And so I think both of these are kind of metaphors which particularly apply to the world we know. At any rate, that's the covenant piece. The other piece in terms of Shavuot is the idea that it is a marriage. This is not just signing a legal document. We are binding ourselves to God, but it's a particular kind of covenant, and that is a marital covenant. It's a covenant of love, not a covenant of compulsion. And the idea there is, of course, that the Torah is our ketubah. And as we've seen, because we've seen some of these prophets together, and particularly Hosea, who wants to talk about Israel following idolatry as a violation of this marital relationship. Now, this idea of Shavuot as a marriage really comes to its fore in Jewish mysticism. And that leads to one of the traditions that we have around Shavuot, which is Torah study on the night, on Erev Shavuot, right? In this case, it'll be Thursday night. And Jews will go to synagogues or gather in groups to study texts. All of this comes from the Zohar, which is, I think, 13th century mystical work. And it talks about, it imagines the Mount Sinai as a marriage, and that the devotees of God will gather and on the night before the marriage and will adorn the bride with jewels. That she's being prepared for her wedding. And what are those jewels? Of course, it's Torah and also the Mishnah and also texts from the Zohar. This all gets much more developed in Sfat in the 16th century, and we have Joseph Caro there, and Isaac Luria, the Ari, and it takes on a real important form. It's, however, only a custom. And the tradition was to stay up all night. When I was young enough, I used to stay up all night studying Torah. I left that behind years ago. But why all night? Well, there is a midrash, it's not in the Torah itself, but there's a midrash that the Jewish people were waiting for the revelation on Mount Sinai all night, and they fell asleep. God had to wake us in order to give us the Torah. That shouldn't happen again. So we'll study all night to make sure that we are awake when the time comes to read the Torah and to hear the revelation on Mount Sinai. Okay, so other forms of observance, as you probably know, we have a tradition of eating dairy on Shavuot. Again, this is a custom. No one knows exactly where it comes from. There's a verse in the Song of Songs that refers, and this is the love affair between a couple, metaphorically, the love affair between God and Israel, as it's later interpreted. And there's a reference about milk and honey under your tongue. And so, okay, there's that. The word chalav, right? Dairy, chalav is milk. Actually, I didn't know this until I was preparing today. The gematria, if you take the numerical value of the letters, chet, lamed, bet, it is 40. Moses spends 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai to bring down the Torah. And so now my favorite explanation, and again, no one really knows why we eat dairy. My favorite explanation is we were on Mount Sinai. We got the Torah, including the laws of kashrut. Now you gotta, if you're gonna eat meat, it's a whole thing, and you have to slaughter it. You have to soak the meat and salt it and everything. And the people just said, let's eat dairy. It's easier, right? We're not prepared to do meat. So, however you look at it, we do have this tradition, first of staying up and studying, and secondly of eating dairy. If we want to talk about things that are not traditions, but now we're in the legal realm, of course, we do have the Torah reading and the Haftorah on the first day of Shavuot, and the Torah reading is the revelation at Mount Sinai, going right up to and through Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, and the Haftorah is the first chapter, and then a couple of verses in the third chapter of Ezekiel. And we'll talk about that at length shortly when we study it. And then there's an additional book, as we do on festivals, and that is the Book of Ruth. Probably my favorite book in the Torah, certainly my favorite short book. Someone once said it's just beautiful on many levels, but it's a book with no villains. There's no bad guys. The only person you could say is kind of bad is the guy who refuses to marry Ruth. He doesn't even get a name. He's just called so and so from the Torah, but it's not really a bad person. He just calculates out that it wouldn't be good for his own children who will be his heirs. So no, thank you. Which was good because she got to marry Boaz. Um, Aviva Zornberg, who is one of my favorite contemporary biblical writers, talks about Ruth as the whole book is about chesed, right? It's loving kindness. Ruth embodies loving kindness. Boaz, who she marries, also embodies loving kindness. And she says it's the counterpoint to the Torah, which is all about law. It's about chesed, right? Judaism can't just be legalistic. We need another side to it. And therefore, it should be about love and compassion and so on. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, having how do we unshare? Why am I see share. I don't see stop share.
Go up to the top.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, yes. Oh, but before we do this, let me stop sharing. Okay, what I wanted to do before we do that is to invite your questions and comments before we get on to Ezekiel. Anything about Shavuos? Saul.
Yeah, the historical context is in Parshat Yitro by B'Chodesh HaShlishi. That's the historical context for this.
Right, right. You could say that. Um, it's true, but fair enough. What's striking about it is that in reference specifically to Shavuot, there's no mention whatsoever. So yes, you can make that connection, but then to say the holiday is a celebration of that, you need to leave that to the rabbis. Okay. But thank you. You're absolutely right, Sandy.
Yeah, continuing what Saul said, I've seen the travel log from when they start, and it's actually
Yes.
7.
All of that, though, I would argue, is an effort to connect this to Shavuot to this event. You can find it. What's surprising is the Torah doesn't make it explicit, right?
Right.
If I ask you what is the Torah what is Pesach in the Torah, it's when we went out of Egypt. What is Sukkot? It's when we were wandering in the wilderness. What is Shavuot? The end of on the 50th day, let's have a holiday, right? So yes, I agree that the connection can be made. What's shocking to me, well, not shocking, what the rabbis do is obvious, but the Torah itself doesn't make the connection. Right? You can find it, not hard to find. Okay. And it does for the other holidays. Francesca.
Okay, well, two things. One that's not exactly on point, but it's what I was thinking about. That the phrase about cherished one and about cross-cultural things. When we were in Egypt, you hear the people saying to each other, Habibi, and Habibi is how they greet each other, and that means cherished one. So it's interesting that something that you're talking about that's biblical is also in another culture, that anyway they borrow so much one from another.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely
Well,
fascinating.
I would go further. In fact, it's clear that we have always borrowed from other cultures ourselves,
Yes,
right? The
who knows
Passover
which way that
Seder
one
is the
went.
most obvious example of that, which we took right out of Greco-Roman culture, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
And I love that our tradition really makes a point of celebrating anything we can just because we can.
Good enough.
It's really one of the treasures of our religion. So many religions are about punishment and you're gonna, and terrible things happening to you. It's not that we don't talk about consequences, but we also look for ways to celebrate life, which is why
Yeah,
my
I
favorite
would
my
go
favorite
further.
toast is l'chaim.
Right. I think that's true. I mean, we do certainly celebrate disasters, and there's
Commemorate.
the Shoah and particularly Tisha B'Av. But it's interesting to me that when the rabbis think about Tisha B'Av, they want to collapse all the calamities into Tisha B'Av. The destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple, the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. All, in other words, when it comes to suffering, let's get it all together, do it. We'll fast for a whole day, we're done. And then Passover and Sukkot and Shavuot and Purim and go on and on. And even when we're commemorating a tragedy, right, which was the near extermination of the Jewish communities in Persia, it's a party, right? Because you know the old story about Jewish holidays, right? They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat.
Yeah, I was
That's
just
it.
thinking about that just before you said it.
Right. Okay. So Barry, I think you had something.
Yes, well, with regarding whether the Jewish people were compelled to accept the covenant or had a full choice. There's also a lot in between.
Yes.
Certainly in the Bible, God provided, well, for one thing, freed the people from Egypt, but also in the desert provided them a protection in conflict.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I think that's right. Um,
so
other,
not only the
yeah, no,
Mount
no,
Sinai
absolutely.
hold it over the head, but if you don't
Yeah.
accept,
I mean,
God, you'll be defeated by your
yeah,
enemy.
well, I mean, what I'm really talking about are two different midrashim, right? So the rabbis are kind of playing with these ideas, but there are others, right? You don't we don't have to see it as either strictly
Yeah, right.
compulsion or free choice. Certainly other options. Anything else? Okay, we are going to move on. Now I will share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so we are in the prophet Ezekiel. This is for reasons that are undoubtedly apparent, but I will emphasize it. In the 13th year of the fourth month, the fifth day of the month, I was among the exiles by the river Kever, that the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. So here the prophet is talking about this experience that he had. We can exactly date this. It was the month of July in the year 593 BCE, right? Because it's the 30th year. And the Jews had been exiled this in 597, some of them during the siege of Jerusalem, and it's only later that the temple is destroyed and everybody is exiled. So it says that he saw visions of God. So this is, of course, tied to the revelation, to the idea of revelation in the fifth day of the month, which was the fifth year of the exile of King Jehoiakim. The word of the Lord came to Yehezkel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of Kasdim by the river Kever, and the hand of the Lord was upon him. So notice that there's a shift between the first person, I saw, and now we are hearing a narrator who says the word of the Lord came to Yehezkel. And so we have kind of, this is clearly, somebody edited all of the statements of the prophet Ezekiel. So we have sort of the editor interjecting here. But we're back now to the first person narrative. I looked and beheld a storm came out of the north, a great cloud with fire flaring up. The brightness was about it, and out of the midst, as it were, the color of electrum out of the midst of the fire, and also out of the midst came the likeness of four creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. So these creatures looked, in some sense, human, but as we'll see, they have, each one of them has four faces, and each one of them has four wings. So their feet were straight, and on the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, right? So it's got a hoof, and they sparkled, these creatures, like the color of burnished grass. Now, the idea that their feet were straight, it's very ambiguous in the Hebrew. Is it like they have one straight foot, or are their feet sort of together straight? And this is there's a tradition when you do the Kedusha during the Amidah. There's a tradition of keeping your feet together as you go up Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And some people connected to this image of these beings who are these are the beings that are going to hold the divine chariot. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their four sides. As for their faces and their wings of these four, their wings were joined as one to another. They turned not when they went everywhere straight forward. So they have two wings each, and at least the top wings are joined together, and then the bottom wings seem to be covering their bodies. And the likeness of their faces, they had the face of a man. They had four. The face of a lion. They had four, had the face of a lion on the right side, and the four beings had the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle. So they are sort of humanoid, but they are winged. Their wings are joined together, and each of them has these four faces. So why these animals? Well, if you think about it, these are, in each grouping of animals, they are the dominant animal. So the lion is, of course, the king of beasts. The fox, the ox is among domesticated animals, as opposed to lions, who are, fierce animals. The ox is the most powerful. The human beings, of course, over the whole animal kingdom. And then the eagle, which is top bird, as it were. Thus, where their faces and their wings were divided upwards, two wings of everyone joined one to another, and they covered their bodies. And as they went straight forward, wherever the spirit was minded to go, they went, and they didn't turn when they went. And now, above the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance like coals of fire burning like the appearance of torches, it flashed up and down among the living creatures. The fire was bright, and out of the fire lightning, and the living creatures ran and turned like the appearance of a flash of lightning. And I beheld the living creatures, as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with its four faces. So these creatures have wheels, they're on wheels, and the wheels have four faces, and the wheels are like the color of emerald, and they were the same, and their appearance and the work were, as it were, a wheel in the middle of a wheel. So it's unclear whether the vision here is there's an inner wheel and an outer wheel, or are there two wheels intersecting at right angles? So they are one within the other. So when they went toward the four sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rims, they were high and they were dreadful, and their rims were full of eyes round about the four. So this is a really bizarre kind of image, and maybe tied to the idea that God is all-seeing. And you could say that God is also omnipotent. They can go everywhere. When the living creatures moved, the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up, the wheels were lifted up. And when the spirit was minded to go, they moved, for the spirit was minded to go there, and the wheels were lifted up along with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So it seems like the thing that animates them, their spirit, is in the wheels. And when these moved and when they stood still, they stood still with those who lifted up from the earth, and the wheels were lifted up with them. The spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. And over the heads of the living creatures, there was the likeness of a firmament. So a rakia, a firmament is some kind of plate, glowing sort of plate, like the color of terrible ice, stretched out over their heads above. And under the firmament, their woods were held straight, one towards the other. Everyone had two, which covered them, namely, everyone two, which covered their bodies. And when they moved, I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of great waters, like the voice of the Almighty, the noise of tumult, like the noise of a host. When they stood still, they laid down their wings. And there was a voice from above the firmament that was over them when they stood and they let down their wings. And above the firmament, there was the likeness of a throne in appearance like sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness of the appearance of man above it. And I saw something like the color of electrum, like the appearance of fire round up, closing it, from which it appealed to be his loins upward, and from what appealed to be his loins downward. I saw what appeared to be fire, and there was brightness around him. As the appearance of a bow that is a cloud in the sky, so was the appearance of the brightness around him. That was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard the voice of one who spoke. So here, he is clearly getting an image of the glory of the Lord. In the Hebrew, the word is kavod. Now, this is not God per se, but it is an emanation or of the presence of God. This is how God can be manifest in a way that is visible to people. The kavod is also what in the book of Exodus comes into the tabernacle once it's built. So what we're looking at here really is the divine chariot, that which will carry the kavod from place to place. God simply wills it, and it happens. It's an extraordinary sort of image. And this is certainly the most mystical text in the Bible. In fact, there's something called Merkavah mysticism, which is a way of mystically contemplating these images of the Merkavah, of the divine chariot, which becomes an important part of Jewish mystical lore. And then there are traditions as to whether you really could do it, should do it, do you have to be a certain age to do it, all kinds of things. But this is probably the earliest kind of Jewish mysticism. There are sort of two major kinds, and the others tend to be around creation, picking up on creation. At any rate, so those are the mysticism of Maaseh Bereshit, how God spoke the world into being, and here it's the chariot. I'm going to stop my share and invite invite your comments or thoughts about this remarkable. I think it's unlike anything else in the Bible. We do have an image. There's a place in Exodus, I think it's Exodus. Moses is gathered with the elders, and they have this vision of the sapphire and some sort of being about it. But that's very, very different than this. Later on in chapter 3, which is the end of the Haftarah does what I read, and it jumps to chapter 3, the first, I think it's the third verse, where he hears, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo, right, which becomes part of our liturgy. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts at all? So,
As you just said, it's part of the service. Al Hamir Kavah is part of El Adon.
yes,
Okay. Hofani v'chayot hakodesh. That's because that's right before Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo. So a lot of this
yes.
is in the prayers.
We'll hear these verses, and there's some verses in Isaiah which become part. Yes, so they're certainly in the service, but as a reference, right? The focusing on this imagery it is really something that's viewed as almost dangerous, because we're really talking now about how we visualize God, a God who we know can't really be visualized. Because if they could, then you could make idols of the image and all kinds of, right? So God is utterly transcendent in Jewish theology, and yet here we get something which seems different from that. And yes, it's the kavod, it's not the divine, it's the divine glory. And the Rabbinic Judaism associates it with Shekhinah, right? The Shekhinah is God's presence. The mystics talk about the Sefirot, that there are 8 emanations of God in the universe. And the lowest is the part that people can most experience. That is the Shekhinah. And as you go closer and closer to the divine essence, a mystic could maybe go up a sphere or two, but the top of this mystical 10-branch tree, where we get to the divine essence, is called the Ein Sof, the endless or unknowable God. It's like a black hole. Nothing can be seen of it. Okay. Other comments about this? Okay.
One more thing.
Yes, please.
I'm looking at some of the words in the Hebrew, and the word chashmal, which is now
Yes,
used as electricity in modern Hebrew, comes from this. It's an illumination. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, they needed modern Hebrew, they needed a word. I mean, today, it probably, Hebrew has become so filled with English words. It would be electrica or something, right? But in the old days, they really were looking to revive biblical Hebrew and to use it in modern ways. And so we get hashmal. Okay, I'm going to say a couple of words. We are not going to read the passage of the dry bones because we just don't have time. But I want to say a couple of words about it. It is the Haftarah, which we read on Shabbat of Pesach. And Ezekiel, same prophet, standing up on a high place, looking, and God says to him, "What do you see?" And he sees this valley filled with bones. And I think presumably what we're talking about is a place where there was a great battle, right? That, after the battle is over and everyone is destroyed and there's no one left to bury the bodies and they are just strewn all over. And God says to Ezekiel, "Can these bones live?" And Ezekiel, being a smart guy, says, "You know." Like, yeah, I'm not going there. And he says, God says, "Speak to the bones," which Ezekiel does. Why God can't do it himself, I don't know. And the bones come together and they knit themselves up and they come back to life. Um, Now, this is well known. It's one of the most best known things in the prophets, um, and it's often viewed as being about resurrection, the resurrection of the dead, and certainly the Jewish tradition talks about resurrection, uh, but I don't think that that's what this is about. Maimonides, for example, says it's got to be all spiritual. It can't be physical. The dead can't come back to life because what age would they be? You're different when you're 12 and 50, And so Maimonides, who doesn't like corporality at all, says it's spirit. I think this vision is about the Jewish community who are in Babylonia, who have given up and they are dispirited. And the question is, can they come back to life? Is it over? Is Jewish life over? And God says, look, go and prophesy to the people. This will end. Don't despair. The people of Israel will come back to life, just as this vision you have seen of these bones coming back to life. Okay, so having said all that, Sandy, you have the last 10 minutes.
Wow, that's great. So before I read our tribute, let's first thank Rabbi Warmflesh for providing us another wonderful year of learning with a heartfelt round of applause.
All right. Thank you very much.
That's the beginning. Okay. So we want to thank you with our tribute, which I will read. Can everybody see that? Wait a minute, I didn't share screen. Sorry. Just a minute.
Got it.
All right, just a second. I have to do something that I didn't do before. Sorry. I have to do one thing. I'm sorry. I had captions and they're blocking my view. So I'm going to get rid of my captions here. Okay, here we go. Share. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Not yet. Yes.
Okay. So this is our tribute to you, Rabbi Warmflesh. Today, May 19th, 2026. Dear Rabbi Warmflesh, how can we thank you? Let us try to count the prophetic ways. Like Moses, you are very humble. Like Amos, you strive for social justice. Like Elijah, you have deep faith in God. Like Esther, who told the king in Mordecai's name, you honor others by giving them credit for what they said or did. Like Samuel, you provide us with spiritual leadership. Like Deborah, you have the ability to inspire others. Deborah encouraged Barak and helped strengthen his confidence to act. Like Ezra, you are a teacher well versed in the law of Moses. Scripture is central to your life and leadership. Like Hosea, you are committed to the truth. Like Isaiah's telling the Jewish people that God wants them to be a light unto the nations, you shed light onto our understanding of the Bible. We thank you. We thank you for bringing these prophets' lives to life. But most of all, we appreciate you for being you, our wonderful rabbi, friend, and prophet for our time. We are deeply grateful for your wisdom, knowledge, and insights that you shared with us throughout this enlightening prophetic course. Signed, your grateful Bible class. P.S. We thank you so very much for providing us another uplifting year of spiritual nourishment. In turn, you will receive either today or tomorrow from us a package of culinary delights.
Well, thank you for that tribute, which thoroughly embarrasses me.
Well, you expect that. You
No,
expect
no,
that.
I appreciate it. And I look, I I do this because I like it, and I'm happy that you're interested in being with me, and those who join us also by you know watching the videos and whatever I'm able to do and to give you, I'm happy to do. But I don't think, frankly, that I am in the class of any of the people you mentioned, although I do appreciate it very much.
Well, everybody that I shared this with before reading it today absolutely agree that that's you.
Okay. All right.
Shows you.
Let's leave it there.
It minimizes you.
Okay.
It's not, it's everybody says that.
All right. Well, so I want to wish everybody a great summer. The holidays are early next year. I know they're over in September, maybe into the first week of October. So we will start up then. What we're going to do, I do not know. I'm going to spend the summer thinking about it and probably think about other things too, but I'll think about it over the summer, and I hope you'll be able to join me again next year. In the meantime, Chag Sameach. I hope you
Sameach.
enjoy
Chag Sameach.
Shavuot, and I hope to see you then. Bye, everybody.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
Thank you,
travels.
Rabbi.
Again.